The Buckeyes proved that they were a top-tier team. Once again, when everyone doubted them after losing to Michigan, they went there. We were there.
SEC is going to be completely different. The Big Ten is going to be completely different. We have an expanded playoff field. Divisions are leaving. And Dabo has set the bar high, right? He won national championships in 2016 and 2018. So an 11-win season is a disappointment. All right, we are off and running on another too early top 25 edition of What's the Spread. Miles on Sports here, Mr. Brad Thomas. It is top 10 time. If you're here, we're happy you're here, but make sure you go back in your feed, check out the 25 through 11, and then come back and meet us here in the top 10. It is about to get real.
It is about to be party time. Listen, Miles, if I could, I would take my shirt off because I feel like it's about to go down. This is like when you're about to pump out a max on bench press, when you're about to see how many pull-ups you can do, because this is the too early top 10. It's what we look forward to. And this year, my too early top 10 looks drastically different than last season. Let's hammer this bad boy out. Miles, you start with your number 10 team.
All right, number 10 is a team that if you talked to me this time last year, or even when they hired Brian Kelly, I wouldn't have LSU in the top 10 this soon, but here they are. I've got LSU at number 10. I'm impressed. I am just impressed with Brian Kelly. We know what Brian Kelly is and isn't, or at least we thought we did. And it's not that I didn't think Brian Kelly at LSU was going to work. It's just I didn't have a lot of confidence. But I forgot it's LSU. And in his first season, he gets a win over Alabama. He wins the SEC. Are you kidding? He wins the SEC West?
Wins.
Are you kidding me? I mean, for your first season, that is unbelievable to me what he has already done. And we knew Brian Kelly was a good coach. But, man, Jayden Daniels coming back, who I thought was a great player, but he played really well last year. I think he can improve this year. Five returning starters on the offensive line. I mean, there's just a lot to like about this program right now. Again, winning the SEC West didn't match up too well against Georgia in that SEC championship game, but to be fair, who does? No one matches up well against, except Ohio State. No one matches up well against Georgia. I got LSU at number 10, and again, I can't wait for that LSU-Florida State rematch in Orlando.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun game. This is where I have Oregon. We touched on Dan Lanning in the past episode, which you guys should go back and watch. And also that reminds me, if you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. If you're listening in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. I am very high on Oregon, mainly because it's a guy who I didn't think I was going to be high on, and that is Bo Nix. Threw for 3,594 yards, 44 total touchdowns. He did it through the air. He did it in the ground. And when he went over West, he looked like a quarterback who could be a legitimate NFL product, an NFL guy. Man, this is a fun team. Defensively, they're going to have to get better. And this is where we start to question, was Dan Lanning just a figurehead sitting behind a Kirby Smart-led defense? We'll see. They did all right with their recruiting class. I was excited for them to see Trayshawn Holden with this team. Trayshawn Holden is no longer with the team, dismissed with some legal issues. So he's still going to have some guys. He's going to have to figure out some things of who's going to throw the ball to. But if he's proved anything, is that Bo Nix is resilient. He's a better quarterback than we've given him credit for. So I have Oregon at number 10.
Yeah, Bo Nix skyrocketing up Heisman favorite boards mid-season last year for how well
Crazy.
He was playing. 44 total touchdowns. I had Oregon back at 14, but still, I'm high on these guys as well. But it comes back to Dan Lanning. Can he figure out the defense to take them to that next level? But they're going to be a fun team to watch, and they're going to be a tough team to beat.
Yeah.
All right, at my number 9 is Clemson Tigers. And at the very end of the last episode, we talked about this Clemson-Florida State ACC debate a little bit. But I've got Clemson in my top 10 because they still, even with all their flaws and all of their roadblocks, they still continue to show that they are the kings of the ACC.
Yes.
An undefeated, unblemished record in ACC play. And Dabo has set the bar high, right? He won national championships in 2016 and 2018. So an 11-win season is a disappointment. I mean, that's where they're at. It's unbelievable, but that's what happens when you build a great program like Clemson and DJU, right? Going to Oregon State. And like I said, I can be high on DJU going to Oregon State, but also be high on the fact that he left the Clemson program because it wasn't a good fit. Kate Klubnik, very highly touted recruit at quarterback, didn't play too well in that Orange Bowl, but watch out for Clemson. They're not going anywhere. Maybe they're falling behind the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio State, and that is true, but they can also still be a top 10 team.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Clemson here. I'm going to have to see how they're going to replace that defensive line because we talked about Clemson breezing through the ACC. Without that strong defensive line, that would have been the case because they were not sound in the back end. Their secondary was really bad. They had some quarterback and offensive issues that they had to mask with great defense. My number 9 team, this is where I have Florida State. Florida State is going to turn into tight end university, huh? They get Jaheim Bell. They get Kyle Morlock. 2 of the best, most highly touted tight ends, and Alabama really needed one, and I was hoping we got one of those guys. We didn't get either. But they're returning a ton on defense. What I really liked about Florida State's defense is they know how to get after the quarterback. They have 2 great bookends here, and we have to call a spade a spade. Jordan Travis is legit. Jordan Travis is going to be a good quarterback. Do I think he's going to be a Heisman Trophy winner? No, I don't think so. And do I think that we're going to sit here and call this 10-3 Florida State team the kings of the ACC? Not quite. You have to earn that reputation. And Florida State has a tough schedule this season, so they're going to have a lot to prove with a lot of very high, lofty expectations. But Mike Norvell has done a great job bouncing back. We knew Mike Norvell was a great hire. I was a little worried when he lost the locker room. But just like any coach, when you lose something, you got to build back the trust. You got to build back the respect. And that's exactly what he did. That's why I have Florida State at number 9. But I could not go higher. I could not put Florida State in my top 5. Could not put them in my top 6. Like, sure, maybe Florida State, USC, Tennessee can all be interchangeable. But there's reasons why I like those other teams more.
The thing too is I hope Florida State proves all of those, right. I hope they prove us right. I mean, you've got them here. I had them at 11. Yeah. I hope I'm not too high on them. I want to see Florida State. It's good to see them back in the spotlight. I like to see the hype train leaving the station, but show it to me. Show me some consistency. It's not that hard to do in the ACC, so they can't be losing these middle of the road ACC games anymore, and they've got to find a way to beat Clemson. So
exactly.
Maybe this is the year. All right, number 8. Might be a little high, Brad, but I've got Washington sitting here at number 8. There's a lot to like about Washington. We touched on Michael Penix Jr. last episode. I love this kid. And he has absolutely flung the ball all over the field. 4,641 passing yards last season. And yes, they have the struggles on defense. You touched on it very well last episode where Washington doesn't really have that defensive identity anymore like they had in past regimes, specifically under Chris Peterson. But Kalen DeBoer has kind of brought that high-powered offense to Washington, and it worked last year. I think it can work in the Pac-12. And if they continue the high level of play at the quarterback position, I think they can have a really successful season.
Yeah, totally fair. My number 8 team, I have USC here. I could have had USC higher, but every single team above them plays defense. That's not even plays better defense. They actually just show up on the field, they put pads on, and they play. But the reason why I couldn't have them any lower is because USC has the clear-cut best quarterback in the nation in Caleb Williams. What's important here to note about this team is they're returning pretty much all the receivers outside of Jordan Addison. That goes a long way. Their defense should get better. I think it's hard for them to be any worse than they were last year. And let's just talk about Lincoln Riley for a second.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley is starting to turn into a Nick Saban recruiting type quarterback. And what I mean by that is Nick Saban, when he recruits, he can literally sit on a desk in front of a recruit's house and say, in 4 years, you will win a national championship within your 4 years here, because he's done it within a championship within every 4 years of being at Alabama. Now Lincoln Riley can say within your 4 years, you have a chance to win a Heisman Trophy. Now they bring in Malachi Nelson, who is one of the best quarterbacks in that recruiting class. So it's just going to continue of growth of great quarterbacks. I think it's remarkable what he's done. Quarterback guru. Man, they're going to be a fun team if they can play defense. But I don't think they really care. I think they know they have Caleb Williams. I know that if they just outscore everyone, they're going to win. But when they run into those buzzsaws, they're going to be a little troublesome. But yeah, this is where I have USC at 8.
Yeah, I've got USC high on my list as well. And, they're one of the most fun teams to watch right now. I was kind of talking about Florida State being back in the spotlight. It's great to see USC back. It's a little bit different than what we grew up with. And I don't know what I mean by that really, but the vibe is just different than the Reggie Bush and the Matt Leinart and the Pete Carroll. But Lincoln Riley brings his own vision to this USC team. But my question is it more of the same than what we saw at Oklahoma? Heisman winning quarterbacks and no playoff wins. Right. And then, here, I understand it was his first season, but he's 1 win away from a playoff appearance, and they can't even have a semblance of defense or
none.
what not a lot of people are talking about is no toughness.
None.
There was no toughness on that field in Vegas, Pac-12 championship Friday night. Nobody benefited more than me and Ohio State fans, but there was no toughness in that USC team.
Yeah.
You cannot play championship caliber football without that kind of mentality. Now, Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner, probably the best player in college football again going into this next season. And they're going to win a lot of games. They could win the Pac-12. They could. They could get to the playoff. But man, when they get there, Brad, is Lincoln Riley going to be able to get it done?
I don't think so. Not yet. He's going to have to get like 3 really tough defensive players to change that landscape, change the philosophy of that defense. They have to get more physical.
And I've got USC high on my list, but let's so I'm not downplaying them, but let's go ahead and go into number 7. This is where I've got the Tennessee Volunteers. And the first thing that I wanted to say about Tennessee is I think that a lot of us who grew up loving college football in our age range, late 20s, early 30s, I think we kind of forgot how big of a brand Tennessee football is, right? I mean, especially you, right? Coming as an Alabama fan, it's supposed to be a great rivalry, you know.
And it was Saturday just a dud for so long.
And it just wasn't there. I think we forgot how much fun it is really to have Tennessee at this level. And this is different. This is different than other Tennessee teams that we've seen that like, oh, you had some success and then they fall off. No, Josh Heupel is
a
real,
good coach.
Man. He's a good coach. And
offensive genius.
Offensive genius. Look at what he did with Hendon Hooker. I think he's got the possibility of doing that with Joe Milton. I know they got a loaded quarterback room, but it's hard not to look at how well Joe Milton played in that Orange Bowl. You and I got to watch that game together. It was really, really impressive performance. I think Josh Heupel is one of those guys who can bring consistency. And I think that what we saw from Tennessee was a flash of what I think we're going to see over the next couple of years. Can they repeat that good of a season again? I don't know. But I think that they can definitely repeat that success over the next 3 to 5 years because Heupel is such a good coach, because they play in the East. Their last game in the regular season is a home game against Georgia. So you know they're going to be working towards that game all year. There's a lot to like about Tennessee right now.
Yeah, I have Tennessee ranked here as well as my number 7 team. And, you know, when I do these rankings, I think about who they're losing, how they replace them. But for them, not losing Heupel is the only thing I care about that offense. Losing Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman. Like, offensively, they're missing these guys, but who was talking about Jalen Hyatt before this season?
Right.
Jalen Hyatt weighs 6 foot, 160, 70 pounds soaking wet. He's fast. But he probably would have never even been talked about had Josh Heupel never came in here. Now he's going to be a first-round draft pick. Cedric Tillman, we heard about Cedric Tillman from his recruit from his high school days, but then he went to Tennessee and kind of like fell off, right? Until Josh Heupel came in here. Hendon Hooker, we heard about Hendon Hooker from Virginia Tech, but no one really ever thought Hendon Hooker would be a legitimate NFL quarterback. And then Josh Heupel shows up. Now he has a chance to do this from the Michigan transfer and Joe Milton. I think the team's going to be very good because – believe it or not, you can have the worst passing defense in the SEC and still win games if you're scoring 45 points per game. And that's what their goal is.
Tennessee at Alabama right freaking now.
Yes.
We finally have some other SEC programs.
Inject it in the veins.
Make it right. Inject it into my veins. I need it right now.
Yes.
Holy hell. What a rematch we have in store in October.
Better be a night game. game.
Man.
Flex it tonight.
All right, so we both got Tennessee at 7. I like it. I'll go into my number 6. It's where I've got USC. Already touched on them. I think, this is kind of where I have USC right outside the top 5. I think 6 is a good spot for them.
This is where I have LSU. Man, this LSU team, we talked about them. We're not going to, just blow it in the dirt. But listen, this team is returning so much talent on offense that just from week 1 through the year got better every single week. The only time they dipped down is when Jaden Daniels got hurt. But Nussmeier stepped in and played like a quality quarterback. I'm really excited for this team. Another guy who I'm really excited about on this team, and of course I would draw a blank right now, Harold Perkins, the linebacker, coming into year 2. He is the quarterback of that defense. He is a high motor, high energy guy. As long as he stays healthy, that defense will play really good and play together. So, yeah, go ahead, give me LSU. I kind of hope that, this LSU Florida State game lives up to everything that I've been hyping it up to be, because I want to be in attendance. I want to be beating my chest because I'm covering some kind of spread, or it's just an amazing football game.
All right, we're going into the top 5 here, and I've done some math, and it seems that we have the same teams in the top 5. But the question is, which order? And let me tell you, I was very proud and very excited to have 3 Big Ten teams in my top 5, and there are plenty of reasons for that. I'm starting at 5, and I'm starting with the Penn State Nittany Lions. Put some respect on the name right now. Penn State. Only 2 losses last year were against Ohio State and Michigan.
Quietly,
and thoroughly dominated every other opponent that they played. This Penn State team is for real. And Sean Clifford has left the program. Clifford, here's what I'll say about Sean Clifford. He gave James Franklin the best chance to win every Saturday. And that's why James Franklin had him in there. Yeah. But was he the most talented quarterback on the roster? No, he was not. That's Drew Aller. He's the most talented quarterback on the roster. Now, I know we haven't seen a lot of them. I get that. But there is so much to like about Penn State. They have continued to recruit at a high level. James Franklin always puts a good defense on the field. They have an elite running game right now.
It's going to be elite for years to come.
An absolutely loaded backfield. And Penn State, when they made their offensive hires a couple of years ago, they wanted to focus on the running game. And I think that's really going to start to pay dividends. But as I said, it's not just the quarterback position. Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Kalen King, Abdul Carter. They are loaded on both sides of the ball. This Penn State team, the only thing standing in the way of this Penn State team is Ohio State and Michigan. That's it.
Now,
I think they will get a win against one of those 2 teams this year. And let me tell you, it's not going to be Ohio State.
Miles, I have Penn State. I have Penn State at number 5 too. And I was the kind of guy betting Penn State this year the wrong way to start the season. I was betting their team totals. And I was like, wait, Franklin doesn't give a damn about running the score up. Franklin wants to shut you out. So then I started betting the other team's team total under, and I was just like, cash and tickets. Like, let's go. Penn State defensively, you could talk about them losing a couple of guys, losing Joey Porter Jr., probably their biggest loss. They honestly didn't lose that much on defense. When we forget, and what we talk about as analysts, we get so hung up on a first-round talent like Joey Porter Jr. leaving, and we just think, oh, they're done. No, they are returning so many starters on that defense. Offensively, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, freaking beast. Drew Aller. Listen, we talked about Sean Clifford, and I think that he kind of had one foot out the door. He was ready for college football season to be over. Now they have Drew Aller starting fresh, year 2. He can spin the rock. They're going to be a dangerous team. And yes, we do have 3 Big Ten teams in the top 5.
All right, number 4. This is where I've got the Michigan Wolverines. And a lot of my top 5 is stemming from the college football playoff day that you and I got to be together, watch together. We were at the Ohio State-Georgia game. There is absolutely no excuse for Michigan not being in that national championship game.
Yep.
And I'm not taking anything away from TCU here. I'm not. But the fact that you go into Ohio Stadium and thoroughly dominate Ohio State again for a second straight year, and then we see just how good that Ohio State team was in that Georgia game. The fact that Michigan didn't come out of that game against TCU and play Georgia for a national championship, they should be ashamed. And you go back and watch that game, and it was a mess. They were all over the place. I mean, they just continued to get in their own way. I think Michigan is at a really good spot right now from a program perspective. And yes, I've got Michigan behind Ohio State because of the playoff and because for whatever reason, Michigan is in the head of Ohio State. Now, Michigan could beat Ohio State again this year. It absolutely would not surprise me. But seeing how Ohio State played against Georgia, that is what's imprinted in my brain right now. I know that Ohio State is at that level. I don't know if Michigan is at that national level yet because they go to the playoff again, right? Second straight year, and they slip again to TCU as 8-point favorites. And I can't get that out of my head. I don't want to talk too long here, but Michigan, you and I said it for years. If Jim Harbaugh just got back to his identity and got back to his roots, we knew how good of a coach he was. And he continues to prove us right. He's got Michigan moving in the right direction. And maybe he is still looking towards NFL jobs, at least in the offseason. But he continues to come back, lead a strong program, and they've got J.J. McCarthy. Now, I don't think J.J. McCarthy's a good passer. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a really good college football player, but I don't think he's an elite passer. And I think that might hold them back again this year.
No, I agree. I have Alabama at my number 4. And for me, it's not an Alabama saying I'm number 4, like I'm not counting him as a top 1 or 2 team in this country. It's we're going to wait and see. Because Alabama is losing, guys like DeMarco Hellams, Brian Branch, Jordan Battle, Henry To'oTo'o, a lot of defensive players, Will Anderson. But this is the first time in a long time where I'm excited because Alabama has dogs and freaks filling in right behind them. And now they get a little bit of a change of identity with Golding out. Offensively, they lose Bryce Young. And I ultimately think that Ty Simpson's going to win the job over Milroe. Ty Simpson's just a beautiful throwing quarterback. Milroe has every bit of athleticism, but I've never once watched film on Milroe, and this is no dig on you, Milroe. If you happen to listen to our podcast, I'm a fan.
We saw him in person, too.
He hasn't made that next step in pocket awareness and passing. When I watch film of Ty Simpson and compare it to the film of Jalen Milroe, I'm like, wow, that was an impressive throw. And when I say that about Jalen Milroe, it's because he threw the ball deep. When I say that about Ty Simpson, it was because it was a smart pass. He had touch. It was thrown into a nice window. Which one do you want as your quarterback? The guy who can make all the passes on the field. So I think we'll be able to, Alabama is what I mean by they'll be all right. Excited to see what happens with the new play calling. I think Saban wants to smash the rock a little bit more. Getting a quarterback give me an offensive coordinator who knows how to use their tight ends, their running backs to the fullest effectiveness is what keeps you in games. If you can't, there were too many times this season. I knew why Alabama was going that direction. There were too many times this season where Alabama would get into 3rd and 2, and they were in shotgun and couldn't convert, and because they were putting everything on Bryce Young's shoulders to make a play.
Speaking about the offense for a second, I liked the Tommy Rees hire. I did not like the defensive hire, but I liked the Tommy Rees hire at offensive coordinator. I think it was another smart move by Nick Saban. Yep. And again, I'm going to hammer the point home. This is not my point. This is a point that I've heard said, and I just agree with it fully. The fact that Nick Saban doesn't bring you in to run your offense.
No.
Nick Saban brings you in to run the offense they've been running, but to improve it. Now, the only difference there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think he brought Lane Kiffin in to completely retool his offense.
Yes, I agree.
Since it's just been,
let's make it better.
Let's make it better. And with Tommy Rees, he's got a young kid who this is the opportunity of a lifetime for him as a football coach to learn from Nick Saban. Is it going to work? I don't know, but I'm just saying I like the hire. I like it more than Bill O'Brien.
100%.
I like it way more than Bill O'Brien. It's just more exciting. And just because Notre Dame didn't have elite offenses doesn't mean that Tommy Rees isn't a good coach.
Yeah. And imagine giving Tommy Rees the tools, the weapons that Alabama gets to play with. Yeah.
And I tend to trust Nick Saban's coaching hires. Alabama, and this leads me into my number 3. This is where I've got Bama. I can't wait to see what we get out of Alabama this year after, not making the playoff, after the way they lost their 2 games. Are you kidding me? Last second losses on the road against Tennessee and LSU. Just crazy to think even how close they were to being right there at the end of the season. Now, here's the thing about Ty Simpson. I think Ty Simpson is going to win the job. I think Ty Simpson is the next great quarterback at Alabama. Yeah. But what I think is going to happen is I think there's going to be a little bit of growing pains. Bama's not used to that. Coming off of Tua Tagovailoa and Bryce Young, I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. And I also think we're going to see that with Georgia. I think we're going to see that with Ohio State.
Yep.
I don't think any of these quarterbacks are going to come in and just be elite immediately. Yep. I think that all those teams are going to have some Penn State. I think I think all these teams in the top 5 are going to have growing pains. That's where Michigan has the leg up because they've got the returning quarterback.
Yeah. That's why I went with Ohio State number 3 and Michigan at number 2, just because of I know what that offense is going to look like out of Michigan. I know what I'm going to get out of the quarterback play out of McNamara. I don't need to beat Ohio State into a dead horse because I want you to do that. But the Buckeyes proved that they were a top-tier team once again. When everyone doubted them after losing to Michigan, they went there. We were there. They almost beat Georgia. And people say almost or close is only good in horseshoes and hand grenades. No, it is a measuring stick. It's a barometer. It is what you grow from. You don't leave there like TCU coming back from their loss to Georgia comes back saying, maybe we weren't as good as we thought we were. Or, wow, we got a way to go. Ohio State comes from their loss and says, we're right there. Put your foot on the gas. Play tough because we can beat anybody in the country. I have them at number 3. Miles, take it away.
All right, number 2. This is where I've got the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I think last year, the Ohio State-Georgia game was our national championship. Now, and I think that game could have been any number of teams. You know, as I said, Bama was right there. Michigan could have been in that game. But it just so happened that we got this amazing Ohio State-Georgia game, which was just a showcase of 2 of the best programs in the country who have recruited at the absolute highest level. And Ohio State came to play, and Marvin Harrison Jr. was a freaking problem for that Georgia defense, just like I knew he would be. Georgia couldn't defend him. Georgia did not have – the Georgia defense, Kirby Smart, had zero answer for who I think is the best player in college football next year, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. This kid is a problem if he stays healthy, because Jackson Smith-Njigba, I said the same thing about him last year, but Harrison's different. Harrison's one of the best college football receivers I've ever seen play. And especially after that game that we saw him in the absolute matchup nightmare that he was for that Georgia defense. He's an absolute game changer. And that's not to mention the best wide receiver group in the country in Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming, who you could make an argument that they are 1, 2, and 3 best receivers in the country. But new quarterback, I think Kyle McCord wins the job. It's going to be between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. I think Kyle McCord wins the job. Kyle McCord gives me Mac Jones vibes. What I mean by that is a kid who's just kept his head down, waited in the wings,
waited for his turn,
and it's his turn. So that's the vibe I get from Kyle McCord right now. I want that to be on record that I think that Kyle McCord's going to win the job, and I think he's going to play really well, and I think he's going to have that kind of success that Mac Jones had, where Mac Jones stepped in to one of the best offenses we've ever seen assembled in the sport. Okay? So, yes, he had a lot, but McCord, you could argue, is doing the same. As I said, that elite group of receivers. We have our entire backfield coming back.
Oh, my God.
We're going to have some growing pains on the offensive line, but everything is there. And the defense was a problem. The secondary was a problem. Jim Knowles, it was his first year. He's got to fix it. But Ohio State proved that you said it. They are right there.
Yeah.
It pains me. I can't stop thinking about that Georgia game. And it wasn't the kick. You know, I saw 24/7 Sports post a video today on their Instagram about the missed kick. I knew it was over before that kick.
Yeah. You could just feel it. It just felt like it.
Right. It came down to the execution in the fourth quarter. It came down to the fact that they lost Marvin Harrison Jr. It came down to the fact that our defense couldn't get it done when it mattered. But man, they had Georgia on the ropes. You remember how fired up I've been getting fired up again just thinking about how fired at halftime. They had Stetson Bennett with his head down. They had Kirby Smart over there trying to console him. They had Stetson Bennett turning the ball over. Man, we had them on the ropes. But hey, there's a reason that Georgia's number 1.
Yeah, God, undefeated. Don't remind me. Let's go for my number 2, Michigan. We touched on Michigan. I think they're, defensively they're going to be great again, which is scary about this Michigan team. I think the fact that their schedule was so easy kind of screwed them, because once you turn it up to play against teams who actually have some kind of spine, it really makes it difficult. Like you play against a TCU team, and I'm not even saying TCU teams some kind of world beaters, but when you go and play a TCU team and you start getting behind, Michigan didn't have any adversity where they were behind.
Yeah,
they were playing from ahead in the games that they're playing. So I think they're gonna have a little bit more of a difficult schedule. I'm excited to see what happens with this running back room, because Blake Corum might miss the beginning of the season. Man, it's gonna be fun to watch Michigan, but I just don't have, like, even though I have Michigan at number 2, right? Like we do these exercises, we do these rankings. If I were to rank them how I think in order of who could win a championship, I'd probably have Michigan like at number 5, maybe 6, which is weird because I have the second best team in the country. But there's a big difference between, having that great, amazing 12-1 regular season, 9-0 Big 10, excuse me, and then getting to the dance and you forgot your shoes at home.
Yeah, Michigan's still not really recruiting at that higher level that you would expect from the recent success that they've had. Which is interesting. And we both have Georgia at number 1. We can certainly touch on them. I got no problem with that. But also keep in mind this season, and I was thinking about this, but this season is the last season in this era of college football. 2024 is going to completely change college football as we know it. The SEC is going to be completely different. The Big Ten is going to be completely different. We have an expanded playoff field. Divisions are probably leaving college football forever. This is like the last year. This is the end of an era. And then we've got all these new quarterbacks playing for all these top teams. So let's talk about Georgia for a second. Their talented guy in the quarterback room is Carson Beck, who everybody thinks that he's going to step in and be that guy. So you got Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama. We got Penn State in our top 5, all new quarterbacks. And Michigan, going back to your number 2, is the only one returning experience in J.J. McCarthy. It's interesting.
It's crazy. Let's talk about Georgia.
Georgia.
Georgia loses so much on defense, like freaks. Jalen Carter, freak athlete. Ringo, freak athlete. Nolan Smith, freak athlete. Those are freaks on this defense. Man, are they going to have like some kind of setback? Because it's got to be coming at some point, right? It's got to be coming at some point. We'll see what happens.
That's what scares the hell out of me.
They're just recruiting so well, though, right? Like they're recruiting so well. They had 5 freshmen and sophomores start on their defense last year. 5. Which means they're just going to be better for another year.
Yep.
It just pains me when I talk about how good Georgia is. It like makes me want to cry because like we had Kirby Smart and, you know, of course he was going to leave at some point, but it just shows you how good of a recruiter this man is. And when I listen to his locker room speeches and stuff he talks about, you know, cancel culture is like, oh God, he shouldn't be talking to his players like that. Blah, 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 blah. That is the type of coach I want to run through a wall for. He gets me fired up. He could be talking about freaking making a sandwich, and I would make the best damn sandwich I possibly could. That's a good coach. That's a good leader. That's a good recruiter.
Yeah, as much as I don't want to commend the guy, I mean, yes, that audio leaking of that pregame speech, I was like, whoa.
I was ready to.
I mean, but that just shows you their mentality right now. And, again, going back to the fact that we were at that Ohio State-Georgia game and those fans and, their fans have that dog mentality. On the field, it's the dog mentality. Look at Stetson Bennett. Nothing about Stetson Bennett makes sense, Brad. Absolutely nothing about what he did makes sense.
Nothing.
Back-to-back national championships. Hasn't been done since Bama did it in what you could argue is a pre-era. This was not the first team in the college football playoff era to win back-to-back. Nothing about what Stetson Bennett did makes sense to me. And so now, I guess my other point there is, what next? What happens next?
They can three-peat, Miles. Did you see their schedule?
Oh,
they're not losing. They're not losing a regular season game. They're not losing a regular season game.
No.
And then let's say they happen to lose an SEC championship. They're still in the playoffs.
They're still in. Their schedule is a pillow. And as much as I would like to talk shit about Georgia, they did have a game get canceled. Who were they supposed to play? I think they were supposed to play Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. So to be fair, they did have that schedule, but it doesn't change it now. They have an absolutely terrible schedule. They still play in the SEC East. I hope South Carolina can give them some kind of challenge. I hope somebody, Tennessee at the end of the year, somebody needs to step up and challenge them, man. And like you said, even if Bama ends up beating them again for an SEC championship, Georgia will just be in the playoff.
Yeah.
So we got to make sure we get some other programs in there that can compete and not the TCUs.
Yes. Like no more of this. Like no more of this teams that like we are just like the great story. Like we want the guys that want to go in there and win, that have a chance of winning. And I don't want to knock on TCU, but no one believed they were winning a national championship. Not one person.
No.
Not one.
14 point underdogs. Vegas was being nice. I mean, in the national championship game, again, how did Michigan ever let that happen?
Oh man, that is a bummer. Well, listen, Miles,
Nice
this
work,
was
man.
fun. This was fun. Everyone, thank you for listening. And listen, guys, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a good 30 seconds here. I appreciate everyone who listens, but go on Twitter, drop us a like, drop us a follow, drop us a comment, because we have to try to beat the Twitter algorithm. We have to tell Twitter that people are listening so it bumps up our page more. Why? Because we want this community to grow. We want more people to be more interactive. We want to talk to you guys. We want to tell you what we like. We want you to tell us what you like. We think we suck? Great. Tell us. But that's all I have to say. Be sure to download the podcast, rate, and subscribe. For Miles Markiewicz, I'm Brad Thomas. Peace out.